players, it will take a while to get used to. Duda looks pretty chilled, I gotta say. But either way, for the other players, maybe the younger players, it's going to be completely new. And yeah, maybe this is the future.
Definitely. And we do see they have headsets on, obviously, to shut out any kind of sound. But they can also listen to music, right?
Yeah, and this is going to be exciting as well because a lot of the players, especially the ones who didn't play in the tour final in Oslo last year, they won't be used to this kind of novel experience of putting their headphones on and listening to their favourite tunes.
Yeah.
And there we see actually Magnus Carlsen choosing his music right now.
Wow. And
I see that it's a list called David's Greatest Hits Challenge. And,
Really?
For those of you who have been following the tour last season, I did try and slip in some song titles to the commentary, and Magnus is listening to some of those songs.
Oh, that's cool. And here we go, you guys. The Oslo Esports Cup, the first major in the 2022 season, has started. And David, what's happening on the board?
It's a Sicilian defense, Skaya, and that means it's going to be dynamic from the start. It's going to be a lot of action in this one. Duda opening with his king's pawn, Magnus replying with a Sicilian, and I'm expecting him to trade a set of pawns in the centre now. There we go, capture, and is this called the Khan variation? It's black just allowing white to take centre, but black is going to set up a wall of pawns. It's going to heat up as the game goes on.
Yeah, I've never seen Magnus play this variation with the black pieces, actually. I mean, he's played the Shrezhnikov famously in the World Championships, and he doesn't normally go c5 unless he does the Shrezhnikov, so I think this is going to be, well, we've seen something new, this Khan variation, where you get double-edged positions, so good, exciting start.
Yeah, already Duda thinking. It's only move 5, but I expect this to continue, actually, for the next few moves, as both sides kind of decide what setup to choose, where to put their pieces, where to put their pawns. And, yeah, Magnus, you're right there, Simon. With this choice of opening, he's shown he's not scared. He wants a full-blooded fight, even with black. And, yeah, I'm excited already about the choice of opening by both players. There we see Duda just taking a few moments and eventually deciding to bring his bishop out, one of the main moves. And, OK, the move's speeding up. Black developing his bishop, kicking white's knight back, and now parking his bishop on a nice long diagonal.
Yeah, and I have to say I'm very excited to see this variation actually on the board because this bishop retreat is quite ambitious, but it does also have its risks. And the primary one, is the fact that some pawns are left undefended on the right side. But Duda doesn't actually go for that. Instead, just moves his queen one square forward.
Yeah, and now black needs to catch up with piece development. Black's pieces are very much asleep at the moment. So maybe bringing out one of the two black knights, maybe pushing a pawn in the centre first for black. OK, he does bring out a piece. At some point, white will castle, most likely on the king side. Often in the Sicilian, we can see white decide which side to castle on, and his intentions, if they're really ambitious, he'll castle on the long side. But first, he offers a trade of dark-squared bishop. So Duda may be surprised by Magnus's opening choice, just taking a positional approach on this last move. And Magnus, he'll still have some issues to solve once these dark-squared bishops get traded off. Where to put the black king? We might well see an attack later on, a mutual attack.
It's very ambitious, I think, for Magnus to play like this, to come out with a new opening, a sharp opening, and I'm hoping that Duda's going to castle queenside here. I'd love to see queenside castling. I mean, the Sicilian, the opening they're playing here is known to be one of the most interesting openings you can get. Very dynamic play where white gets his pieces out quickly and attacking on both sides of the board. So this is a great start, exciting start.
Yeah, I know if I was facing you here, Simon, I wouldn't even have to guess which side the white king is going. It's definitely going that way. And if we do see the kings parked on opposite sides of the board, as you mentioned, it's just going to be complete chaos. Both sides throwing pawns against each other's kings. First, Magnus Carlsen just takes a step forward with one pawn, just solidifying the dark squares, but a bit slow.
It is a little bit slow, but Magnus has actually played this variation before. The thing is, though, it's not a favourite of his. He's only played it 5 times in his career, and they were never any serious games. They're always like a super fast chess, and he's actually following a game that he played against Hikaru Nakamura in a Blitz tournament in 2020.
Wow.
And there he lost, and he actually lost in, get this, 23 moves.
Oh.
Incredible.
So, well,
what can this mean? Has he found
he has to have found an
in this
improvement
position?
because the great thing about Magnus is he has like a photographic memory when it comes to remembering and recalling his own games. So there must be something here down the line that he's thought about.
Oh, and Simon, you're going to be happy with this last move. White's knight has just developed itself, but that has cleared the path for the white king to castle on the queen side, on the long side. And, OK, moment of truth. Which side is that white king going? If Duda castles left with the king, he's going on the attack. He wants to win. And maybe we'll see a situation where Magnus is under pressure and facing a big attack very quickly. If Duda castles on the right side of the board, though, it will become a slower game.
Yeah, I've been looking at these positions quite a lot recently. So I just finished a chessboard course on Mikhail Tau's best games, which is just out now. And if you want to learn the open Sicilian, the legend, they call him the magician, Tau, he loved these positions as white. He would win nearly every time just by playing the most aggressive setup. And he'd always put his king on the queen side and he'd start pushing those pawns on the other side of the board, which is called a pawn storm. And you try to storm the position with your pawns. So I'd love to see something like that happen here, a bit of a pawn storm. So. Yeah.
But it's going to be an interesting moment here because if he chooses to go, like you say, to the left with the king, you know, all-out war, then, OK, we're going to see that Duda is in a really aggressive mood. But if he just decides to kind of move the king to the right, then we're going to actually see that, OK, Duda's like, well, I'm just going to take a very strategical approach. I'm going to start targeting. There's one pawn that doesn't have any natural defenders, and that is the pawn 2 squares in front of the black queen. And you're going to see Duda pile up all the pressure on that point.
Yeah, so this is the pawn you mean here, Jovanka, and if Duda does indeed make the move we want to see, the move we're expecting, and castle on the long side, then the rook is primed and ready to attack this pawn later on. It's a backward pawn. It can't really move forward later without just getting captured. So it is a long-term target, and as Simon pointed out, this is the other idea, to just throw pawns forward on the other side. White's king is super safe. Note that it's not just got 3 pawns in front of it, but it also has 2 perfect defenders. I think White's king is super safe on this side, and why not get just a ready-made attack if you can. For example, if black does castle, the attack begins, and white is clearly ahead in this race, throwing pawns towards the black king. The other option, I think he'll regret it if he takes it, castling on this side of the board for white. I don't see how this is really going to turn into anything special for white now. King's on the same side of the board. It's impossible to really attack safely, at least. And, OK, he's delayed the decision. Simon, are you happy to see this one? F for forward. The F pawn has marched forward, maybe preempting the march of the G pawn as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy to see that one. I mean, I would have been more excited if he'd put his king on the left-hand side. But this is a logical and aggressive move. He's using those pawns to try and create some chaos. I mean, I was thinking if I could get any position as white against Magnus Carlsen, this one would be my position because he's obviously brilliant at every part of the game. But I think the one way you can try to beat Magnus is to come at him and throw everything at him. Positionally, he's incredibly hard to break down. So, this is going to be very exciting. But I'm wondering what will happen after this. Magnus probably has to castle kingside at some point. It looks really scary to me. And maybe break with one of these pawn pushes, which is typical in the position that black can also do.
Yeah, it's all about these central pawns, and it depends whether white can now get his pawns racing, rolling towards the black king in time, or whether now, because white has delayed castling his own king, whether black is in time, for example, if the pawn does march forward, to just challenge in the centre. And now it does open up, and if things do open up, white's king will wish it had committed itself earlier. So, OK, another critical moment. Will Magnus, in this position, will he castle his king, or will he use the Duda technique and delay the decision himself? Other options would be maybe for black to start pushing pawns, just hoping that the white king ends up on that side of the board. Let's go back to the players. It's kind of a game of cat and mouse right now. Neither side really showing their intentions, but both sides clearly hoping or expecting the game to liven up at some point.
Cool. Jan Christoph Duda coming all the way from Poland to play in the Oslo Esports Cup, and he is, he's been on fire lately, and he's qualified for the candidates, and he made it all the way to the final in the Charity Cup. I have to say, he really has figured out this format, online rapid chess.
Yeah, last season on the tour, he had some good events, well, some decent events, but some quite poor events, and now he seems much more consistent. Also, he's the only player in this field who is in the candidates tournament in the summer in just under 2 months now. So we actually had him on our podcast, and he was saying he's going to be hiding some opening preparation. He can't play his best openings because his rivals in the candidates tournament this summer, they will be watching all of these games and they'll be studying them really closely. So maybe that will affect Duda's play slightly, but then again, he's quite universal. He plays a lot of different openings, especially with white, and yeah, the same goes for Magnus Carlsen. So I think both players will just be happy to push the battle into the middle game so that they don't reveal any secrets.
And what I liked yesterday during the opening ceremony is that when you asked Duda whether he was feeling confident, he said, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You know, he's confident. And it makes for an exciting battle when you have players who believe in themselves and believe in their abilities. Because if you're going to beat Magnus, you can't be second-guessing yourself.
That's true.
And Magnus decides not to commit his king and instead concentrate on developing the light squared bishop. And now it's got a hold to escape to.
Yeah, maybe pushing those pawns towards the white knights as well to destabilize them and push the white knights to worse squares. If that pawn advances one more square forward, maybe a bit of a decision for Duda to make. So. Yeah, the evaluation bar above the players, the orange bar we see there, it likes white. It says that white has a +1 advantage, a 1 pawn advantage, but let's ignore it for now. I think this one is very much about how the next few moves go. If white can continue the attack, yes, it's going to be great for him, but it's not easy to do that.
Yeah, I think he's got to make a decision now where he puts the king. It's one of those things you kind of you can delay and delay, but the more you delay a decision like this, it kind of like you overthink it. You either go queenside, you go for it, or you go kingside, a slightly safer way to proceed. So it's going to be very interesting. But I'm actually quite transfixed by the psychedelic wallpaper as well. I'm sort of looking at that and I'm like, whoa, you know, it's pretty impressive, isn't it? The whole arena. And this is a first where you've got everyone there just opposite each other in this proper e-gaming environment. So it's nice to see something new.
I've heard like discussions about it, and I'm eager to hear from you guys. Do you think chess, online chess, of course, is an e-sport? Does it qualify for being an e-sport?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
definitely.
competitive, it's fast, it's furious. You see, more excitement on the board, especially in online chess, especially in rapid chess, than a lot of other esports, a lot of other games. So,
yeah, and if you think how many people are actually playing online now, just around the world, it's an incredibly high number. So, you know, it's one of the most popular games online. So it must be an esport.
Yeah.
That's where everyone plays now, online.
And if you think about it, like all the other esports, usually like some war gaming kind of games, they're kind of based on chess, right? Chess is the original battle game and you know, the ultimate battle game, basically, right?
Yeah, definitely, you know, because there's two players testing their wits against each other. They have to come up with the strategies. They have to position their forces in the best way. They have to outthink the other person because you know, all the information is on the board. And I mean, the beauty of online chess is that, you know, with other computer games, you need a super powerful PC with a massive graphic card or whatever. My technology terms are not that great, but you know, and with chess you can just play on your phone.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, this is one thing that I've seen throughout Norway. Norway is chess obsessed, and you know, I'll be on the bus and I'll be seeing people playing online chess.
Yeah.
And I see young people play, I see old people, women, men, everyone
Exactly.
doing it. And so, quite rightfully so, it is an e-sport. And I love the background myself, going back to that subject. You know, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And it's something that, you know, is kind of taking chess to that extra level.
Yeah.
Can I ask what music you play? Because I'd have to put like some Pink Floyd on or something, I think, with that background. I think we all should like.
I agree.
I think like some. Okay, this is again showing my age, but Simon might. Some kind of like trance, kind of like.
I'll go along with that as well.
Right?
And after a long pause, we do have a move.
yeah, and Duda continues to procrastinate. He hasn't chosen which side to put his king on, and like Simon said, you can't delay it too much longer with white. Soon the position will open up, or soon black will be fully ready to kind of create some threats. And the longer white's king sits in the center, the longer he delays the decision, I think he's just going to miss his chance. So this is one thing I'm kind of really bad at, a sin that I commit all the time, not committing, just kind of delaying. But there will come a moment when you will regret not choosing one plan. You just have to choose a plan and stick to it. Duda is not doing that. He pushes a pawn to stop the advance of black's pawns, but that last white move, it's very slow. It doesn't really help his position in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually, is this a sign that Duda is maybe lacking in confidence. Because, you know, like I'm looking at my database, of course, I have the information here, so it's easy for me to say. But, you know, white traditionally takes a decision with the king, you know, either goes to the right, to the left. But, you know, those are the main moves. This move, only played once before in a junior tournament.
I think it's just that it's the first game of the tournament, the first game of the day, and Duda just wasn't really warmed up enough to go straight for the attack, straight for the kill. Maybe playing the world champion, he thought, okay, let's just grow into the game and get in the flow a bit later on. But sometimes early days, you still have to attack, you still have to go for it. And Magnus now has blocked up the centre. What do we think of this move? He's trying to open things up maybe, or trying to at least stop the advance of white's pawns, but quite committal itself.
Yeah, it seems like quite a standard idea. Often white wants to push the Freddy pawn, which is attacked now 1 square forwards. And when you're playing these positions, when you're playing any opening, I think it's so important to know what pawn breaks you have. And if white does push that pawn, I mean, maybe we can show it. Black can react in the centre with this very typical break with the backwards pawn. Even so, this is sort of the pawn goes here, and now black at some point, I don't know, even now can push this one forward. So this is like a typical plan from black, you know, moving forwards, playing this counter-attacking opening, the Sicilian, and taking chances when he gets the opportunity.
Yeah, really exploding open position now, and you're right, Simon, it's not clear whose king is going to be safer. Still, both of them parked in the middle of the board when the lines do begin to open. So Duda would love to play this move, as you mentioned, push this pawn forward. This is kind of a really typical, really thematic way to start an attack. You block things up and then you push your pawns now that the centre is closed. But Magnus, for sure, will explode the position open with his own pawn push. So Duda really has to be careful of pushing forward while his king's in the middle. But now the issue is, maybe you've missed your chance, you've missed your shot. If you castle queenside now, which looks desirable, the king's still pretty safe, then suddenly black can create a direct threat. Black can even win material by bringing his bishop out. This wasn't available before. This bishop was blocked in. But now, suddenly, look at this. It's a skewer, attacking the queen, attacking the rook behind it. And when the queen moves, black simply wins material. Black will pick off the white rook. So suddenly, Duda, he maybe will be regretting not taking that opportunity to get his king to this side. Going the other side as well does have drawbacks. You go into the eye line of this black bishop. Still, black can gain time attacking the white queen. The momentum is potentially changing. The evaluation bar still not too impressed by what Magnus has done, but for a human, it looks like a very, very sensible move. Also, note this piece, locked in. So strategically as well, black very happy to block the centre and make this bishop a bit of a useless piece for now, just looking at its own pawns.
Can I just add one thing? This kind of pawn central break that black has just done also works because the white knight sitting on the b3 square is kind of out of the game. If it were in the centre, don't be careful about pushing that pawn to attack it.
Yeah, even if the knight were on the other side of the board, if you could kind of pick up this knight and put it on this square or this square, then it would be really dangerous. Black has just weakened those squares, but okay, Duda, after another long think, does decide to trade bishops. And after black recaptures, this rook actually on a decent square, can swing across now. White has blocked things up. So this is the key moment. Can black break open the centre, or does he have to wait and prepare that for a move or two?
I think it's so important when you look at these openings. There's a couple of things. We mentioned pawn pushes, but you've got to think about tempo and timing. If you're going to this sharp open Sicilian, probably one of the sharpest openings you can get, the tempo increases. So you don't really have time to play like A3, the move that Duda played generally. I mean, it's probably not a terrible move, but you want to play with a bit more urgency. And when you're playing openings, just having that in the back of your mind, how urgent are the moves and the ideas. A3 seems slow. It might give the advantage away. It's a good thing to bear in mind. And Magnus's move there, throwing the knight straight into the centre of the board, very interesting move.
It's very interesting, but it's kind of a little bit unlike Magnus in a way, because it's quite a committal move. Because, you know, if the knights get traded off, black has compromised the pawn structure for all time. And I kind of expected Magnus to actually build a little bit more.
I think it was just not much else choice, not much else to do. If black had castled kingside in this position, then suddenly white will start to unleash the pawns, push them forward. So I think he's just trying to counter against this. And by trading pieces, remember, black is still a bit cramped. This bishop in particular can't develop itself to a good square. While you're cramped, you want to trade pieces and want to swap things off. And now some crazy stuff is happening on the board.
Look at the evaluation bar.
Yeah,
I mean, is that
Whoa!
Yeah. Okay, let's catch up with the position. This knight was attacking the queen. We saw a trade. And here, Duda has, instead of moving his knight, which was under fire, just moved his queen to the side, eyeing up the rook along this diagonal. But can Magnus just grab this knight? Maybe you can just give away your rook here, and after you take this pawn, threatening the rook, threatening to promote, maybe there's some counterattack, maybe a queen check, maybe the white king suddenly is in big danger in the middle of the board. It's really committal.
He played it so quick, didn't he? I mean, this is the position where you're going to play a move such as this. You take your time. It's a critical moment, and he shuffled that queen over, probably not having enough time to calculate. So it's...
He just assumed, you know, that you can't capture the knight.
we know what they say about assumption. So, yeah.
What? I don't know.
Assumption is the mother of all...
I thought it
that's
was
what I know.
I thought you were going to say the other one.
That's the only one I know. I think it's from Snatch or one of those films. So
Don't assume.
don't assume.
Okay.
No.
So yeah, big moment now. Magnus, if he doesn't take this white knight, then black's pawn in the center of the board might just fall off. White's queen is attacking that black pawn in the center, and black does have doubled pawns on the D line. If you look at the D file, those two pawns are very weak. If Magnus doesn't take this one move, this one opportunity to take the white knight, to sacrifice material, then, well, okay, Magnus has done it. We see the moves very quickly. Magnus has sacrificed a rook for a knight. So black is down on material now, but look at that black pawn. It's attacking the rook in the corner, wants to make a new queen, and no matter where white's rook runs away to now, black's queen is going to jump forward, it's going to pounce, check the white king. Black's king at some point is just going to castle, and white's king is going to be eternally in danger. So
you might even better play check and grab the other, grab that pawn of white's, which we can see. But this is kind of typical for a Sicilian when it goes wrong for white. The reason that people play this opening to Sicilian as black is the counter-attacking possibilities. You get many chances to suddenly do some counter blow, and Magnus is just unleashing here. Even if black simply castles, which he has done, the rook can come to the middle. White's king is stuck in this bad position, and black has great attacking possibilities here, I'd say.
yeah, still anything can happen. So black is behind on material. If his attack doesn't work, then white has an extra rook for knight and will most likely win. But if black's attack crashes through, it's going to be game
So
over.
why does the bar just jump down?
That was a strange last move because he's giving that very strong pawn away. He could have guarded that pawn, the very advanced black pawn there. Instead, he's just giving it away.
I think he wants to... I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I perhaps would have grabbed a pawn or maybe protected that pawn. But, Magnus is Magnus, and he likes to use all his pieces.
Yep.
Use the rook, use the bishop.
Yeah, maybe we can just jump in to show what Magnus could have done, maybe even stronger in this last position. It's all about this pawn, as you said, Simon. This pawn under fire, and firstly, you could take this pawn, but this would allow white's queen to get back into the game and retreat, also ganging up on this pawn, picking it off next move. But I think Magnus, the move he didn't consider was just a quiet move, bringing his queen in. And this would have prevented Duda's last move, re-centralizing the white queen. And suddenly this pawn is going to win the game long term. Magnus let this pawn disappear. He let it go. He castled instead. And now after the white queen retreated, yes, black gets his rook to the open file, hitting the white king indirectly. But this pawn is now doomed. And once this pawn disappears, Magnus is banking fully on the attack. He's just gambling, going all in on an attack against the white king. And look at this. Duda, he didn't castle with his king. He couldn't. He wasn't allowed to. So now he's brought his rook across, and his idea is to castle by hand, as we call it, dropping his king back and then shuffling it off into the corner. So it's long-winded, but it's necessary. And Magnus needs to strike now. Otherwise, Duda will be in charge in this game.
Okay, are you still liking it for Magnus? Because the bar is still over to his side.
Still looks pretty good, to be honest. You do have 2 or 3 moves while this king runs away to safety to create threats. So you could maybe start ganging up on this central pawn in conjunction with the knight and the rook as well, both eyeing up that pawn. You can take this guy at any moment. I don't think Magnus is in trouble yet, but he needs to be accurate now. I think maybe he just rushed his last couple of moves, and his advantage could have been even bigger.
Okay.
Maybe you can take the other pawn as well with bishop. Some possibilities using that pin.
One. Even more simple. So bishop takes pawn,
Yeah,
and white can't recapture because of this pin.
Well, and he definitely has more time on the clock, Magnus. He's played fast. Jan-Christoph Duda has spent a lot more time. He has less than 5 minutes left on the clock in this very first game in the Oslo Esports Cup. Now, remember, the players, they play matches. So Magnus and Jan-Christoph will face each other in 4 rapid games today. Best out of those 4 rapid games. If they are tied out of those 4 games, they will head straight to tie breaks with Blitz and Armageddon. And of course, same situation in all the 3 other matches going on right now. And the bars in all games, they have been shifting a little bit from side to side. I saw it was looking very good for Jordan van Forest at some point in his first game against Pragnananda. But the bar is roughly in the middle in that game right now, and same situation in all the other first games as well. But for Magnus Carlsen, it's looking quite good. That's what David is saying.
Yeah, but there's a big if at the end of that. So it looks good if Magnus is able to get active and maybe win a few pawns or get towards that white king. That's what Magnus is thinking on now, and he's investing time wisely. He needs to stop at this moment and calculate. I'm expecting the move you mentioned there, Simon, the black bishop jumping out, taking a pawn. It's just irresistible, right? If you can see a pawn and you can just take it, why not? But at the same time, Duda is 2 moves away from getting his king to safety, and then he'll feel confident that the white rooks will start to play a big role. So both players have hope for the future.
Yeah, I have to say one thing though, you know, once Simon's move gets played, it's not that easy for black to actually generate even more counterplay. And once the white king puts on its hat and says, right, I'm off, I'm out of here, there is that potential, you know, for things to go seriously wrong, because if 2 rooks get active, find some lines, and the position has a lot of open lines, then it could be trouble for Magnus.
A bit surprised. I know it's the first game, and I think that's showing, because their time handling is peculiar to me, because, you know, Magnus is now having a big think, but he missed the move that David pointed out. It's very strong infiltration with the queen, and you know, it's hard to adjust to different time controls. Like you're playing, maybe you've been playing bullet chess, you come here, you've got an extra 14 minutes and you've got to use it. So I think that's something all the players need to sort of get used to a bit more, just adjusting to the new time control. So,
we did see Magnus make a bit of a face there.
Yeah.
He grimaced. He was not happy with how things have gone, or not happy with his position. He's still doing okay, but I think maybe he's starting to realise there was something even better. And like Simon says, if he'd spent his time just 2 moves ago, he would have probably won already. But spending his time now didn't necessarily help too much. So the move we showed was played. Black's bishop came out, took a pawn. That was possible because of a pin. And now white's king has run away. So now black's bishop is under fire from that white pawn in the centre of the board.
But how naked is that white king, though? I mean, it's dangerous for Jan Christoph.
Right now it is, but if it gets one more move, maybe it shuffles off to the corner. It's got 2 pawns, adds clothes to protect it, to kind of cover up its...
Oh, that's a nice image.
maybe queen d2, move the queen in here, is something like this, is because you're not actually threatening to take the bishop here.
That's a really nice point.
Something along that. So white isn't actually threatening to take the bishop. It's strange, because that b pawn is still incredibly strong, and that might be the reason the valuation bar is still much in Magnus's favour.
So we have to show this, as Simon mentions. You can just make a move. So your move is good there, Simon, bringing maybe the queen into the game. But for example, if you just wait, if we just make a move to create some squares for the black king so you don't get checkmated later, white is not actually threatening this bishop. I missed this one because after rook takes rook, we see a trade. White is actually a whole rook up here, but you can just capture this rook. You can even give away your queen for the rook. White is a queen up now, but remember this pawn, it's still on the board, and black at the end can make a new queen. Black actually at the end of this is 1 pawn up as well, so black would be winning this position. So if pawn takes bishop isn't necessarily a threat, then black does have this one move. Maybe instead of this one, maybe there's something more useful. For example, you could even push this pawn forward in the center, just hoping that white captures your bishop, and then the same kind of mechanism, trading rooks and then giving up your queen and making a new queen. So yeah, lots to consider for Magnus Carlsen. I'm expecting him, as you mentioned there, Simon, to actually leave his bishop on the square now. Yeah,
I mean, I was thinking queen d2, because you have the threat of also taking the pawn in the centre of the board. You maybe have a check towards the black king, the white king even. You're bringing the queen nearer to that piece. But d5 looks incredibly natural as well. But this is a critical moment. He is using his time better now. So I think, you know, both players are adjusting a bit more to the new environment. You've got to adjust to the environment you're playing in. I've noticed, David, whenever you play, you often turn up to the board, like at the last moment, should we say. Is that because you're just trying to get in the right zone? And I think some people turn up early because they want to get in the zone by sort of meditating in some respects, but it's...
I mean, actually, the first few times it happened when I started arriving late to games was simply because I was disorganised. But as time went on, I realised that actually I felt much more comfortable that way. It meant that I could avoid talking to people. Not that I'm trying to be antisocial, but I just try to stay in the zone, not get distracted. And also, I kind of appreciate having that extra minute or two just to kind of psych myself up. Everyone's at the board, they're doing their thing, but I'm still in my own little world, and in a way that helps me. I know Magnus does the same. He's always kind of, if not late, then at the last minute, and yeah, just each player has their own different routine, right?
Yeah. No, I've just like you and Magnus, I saw Garry Kasparov would always turn up 10 minutes late because he wanted to avoid the photographers and also people chit-chatting and having to sign things which would get him out of the zone. Other players, I mean, I've seen them arrive like half an hour early and just sit at the board and make it clear. And actually, Magnus retreats the bishop. Maybe he didn't spot this opportunity. Or maybe he just thought, well, the bishop will need to move at some stage.
If I can spot it, he can spot it. So it's just like, I mean, I guess he just went for the safe option, right? But
yeah, and that's very safe. His bishop's on a decent square. I guess it's like you said, Simon. He saw that the bishop wasn't attacked, but he couldn't find anything useful to do. Maybe he was unsure about bringing the black queen in. Now he has gone and grabbed a pawn. But there we go, the evaluation bar now on white's side, and this is what we were warning about. Yes, black had an attack for a while. White's king was feeling really unsafe, but suddenly, if we do that count, white has an extra rook. Black only has a knight and a pawn in return. Or knight and 2 pawns now, but one of the pawns will drop off. And
yeah, I'd be very tempted to swap the queens off here. I mean, you know, it does seem that white's king is a little bit more unsecure here. So white now, if he wants to, can go queen to the left to force the exchange of queens, which in general I feel would be something white wants to do. He's not going to be in any immediate danger then. He has 2 rooks. 2 rooks incredibly good later on. Okay, but he's threatening to win the queen instead.
Yeah,
right.
Wow. Bit of a strange move there, but white does have a threat of bringing his rook in the middle of the board all the way across and trapping the black queen. And meanwhile, we see Pragnananda on the brink of a win, potentially.
What happened in that game? I've heard rumors Jürgen van Voorst have been super frustrated. The bar was all the way over to his side a few minutes ago, but something must have happened. If it is a blunder, I don't know, but the bar all the way over to Pragnananda's side. The 16-year-old could be the first player in this tournament to get a win.
Yeah.
And yeah, look at you.
It's like they say, you know, it's not easy to win those 1 games, especially if it's complicated or messy. And whilst there you can see Pragnananda, and someone who will be happy actually is Rahul, who earlier on tweeted that they were super excited to see the Oslo Esports and they were cheering for Pragnananda to win. And there you can see Magnus has actually just retreated his queen. And we can see Mamedyarov in full focus mode.
Yeah, Mamedyarov, he is facing Liam Le on the very first day here. In his match, we are paying attention to this game. Jan-Christoph Duda, Magnus Carlsen, the bar has been over to Magnus's side, but it has shifted sides. Is it now looking good for Jan-Christoph?
It's looking good. He needs to find a move here, which I think is pretty obvious. It was set up by his previous move. White's rook in the middle of the board just needs to swing the whole way across, attack the black queen, force it back, and then the white rooks can actually start grabbing pawns.
I mean, he could take the pawn immediately here as well, couldn't he? You know, maybe
that one as well, maybe
another option, but it's certainly looking like this is the best position White's had, right, so far. He was in trouble. He's got rid of Magnus's very dangerous pawn that was coming down the board, and yeah, I mean, if I was black here, I'd be, you know, really upset with letting the position slip.
Yeah, black's queen looked at it. It's just offside right now.
But you can't be upset. This is one thing.
When
you play chess, you have to be unemotional.
Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I think. Yeah, some people have. I mean, I remember actually when I played the British Championships, and I was so annoyed with myself.
You stormed off.
I see. Yeah, I stormed off. I did. Yeah, I did a bit of a stormer. You know, so I don't think I knocked the pieces over. But,
no, but you threw the score sheet.
Did I? Oh dear. Wow.
It wasn't, but I don't know. No.
Hopefully I politely threw it, like, you know, so...
No, but, you know, I totally understand. Okay, there you see queen takes pawn. And it's very, very natural, you know. You have so much emotions, especially when it's built up. And if you've been winning and you let it slip, it's the worst kind of feeling. Because you've done this all to yourself. And if you had, you know, your mind is always thinking about regrets. You know, you're thinking, well, you know, if I just taken care, why did I allow that queen into the middle of the board?
Sorry, I was thinking the best thing I ever saw was someone with a score sheet at the the end of the game. He was really upset, and he just made a paper aeroplane, and he just threw it at his opponent. And I was like, that is such a good way to show your depression. Just make a little paper airplane and right in your opponent's head.
That must be a good feeling, though. But no, not possible to make paper airplanes in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. This is online chess. And a few moves on the board. What's happening, David?
Yeah, things are heating up on the board and also the clock. Look at this. Both players now around the 2-minute mark. And as Simon pointed out, White's queen went and grabbed a pawn. Now it is a rook for a knight and a pawn. That's the material balance. So White ahead on material. But this black knight may be creating some threats. At the very minimum, black's knight is going to go back to the e5 square and plant itself on a nice outpost. Magnus Carlsen, he loves kind of having strategic long-term compensation. He doesn't mind being points down, material down. He just wants good pieces. And that black knight is going to be a good piece. And there we see Duda's board. Duda has his board really big on that huge screen. Magnus had it much smaller. That's really interesting for me. But, OK, here we go. I think we will see some tactics now that Duda is down to 1.5 minutes.
And it's also a kind of position where Jan Christoph can actually get a bit nervy because, yes, that knight is, as David says, heading towards the centre, but it's also pointing towards the white king. If you can imagine the black queen joining, you know, in kind of coordinating together, then it's kind of looking a little bit scary. And you always have to think about, you know, the psychological effect of these type of moves, you know, because Duda will not just be visualizing concrete lines. He will be thinking ahead and thinking, oh my goodness me, what's going to happen if my king gets under fire from the queen, the rook? It's a bit exposed. What can I do? And he will be looking at keeping control. And he has under a minute on the clock. He needs to speed up. This position is getting critical.
40 seconds. I didn't realise he was so low.
40 seconds.
Wow, OK.
Minimum, just push a pawn, kick that knight out of your half of the board. There we go. That's the most obvious move.
They're only next door. He probably heard you.
Whoops.
No, we can guarantee there is a soundproof wall. The players cannot hear us.
Go on, take the knight, Magnus. Queen takes knight.
Scared me there for a moment. But
you know,
my point is that was the most obvious move, but it cost him most of his remaining time. And now Duda is going to be eternally in time trouble, down to 40 seconds. Yes, he's helped that black knight back to the centre of the board, but it was more important to kick it away, especially low on time. You don't want a knight parked in front of you, in your face, near your king. And, OK, he has kicked back that black knight, and now the white queen has stepped back. Black's queen needs to jump in, I was about to say.
Come in.
Before it's too late. That black queen was almost trapped.
Very interesting now, extremely interesting. I mean, as Jovanka pointed out, the white king is a little bit exposed, but Duda has control of the centre of the board here. The timing, I've never seen Duda lose on time. He seems to handle that short time, like yourself, incredibly well, David. I mean, you live on the increment. I mean, it's, but I mean,
I play better with 10 seconds on my clock than with 2 hours on my clock. So Duda, I will say one thing about him as well. He's one of the best in the world at material imbalances. So when it gets really crazy, when it's a queen for a few pieces, or when it's just a really wild position, strange pawn structures, he's really, really good there. And Magnus normally likes a bit more control. Here, he's got a knight on a great square for black. But apart from that, maybe Magnus wants to start pushing some pawns. He just wants to kind of solidify everything. It's not easy, though. Will we see a check from the black queen? Will we see just a waiting move? Because that black knight isn't really under threat. If White's rook takes that black knight on the next move, black's queen can actually just drop back on the diagonal and check the white king. But no, solidity is Magnus's middle name, and he's just solidified that black knight. And a queen trade offered.
This is a good strategy from Duda. You know, when your king is even in the slightest bit of danger, try and trade off queens. The queen is the most aggressive piece on the board. Get her off.
Yeah.
And I think
Magnus will say no?
I think he'll say no. You know, because especially when you take into account the clock situation as well, under a minute, more chances to go wrong if the queens are on the board, even if it does mean retreating the queen back to where she came from.
Yeah, if you trade the queens now, then black is maximum playing for a draw. And that's not Magnus's style. Maybe he can hold that one. Black's knight is super strong after all, but trading the queens means it's going to be very one-sided. The white rooks will eventually come into their element. So maybe that black queen has to go in the direction it came from, back on that diagonal, preserve itself. What is Magnus thinking about? There we go. He does eventually retreat his queen, and Duda continues to centralise his pieces as well.
Yeah, I mean Magnus's knight is such a beast of a piece there in the middle of the board. It's supported by the pawn. It's a beautiful, in a position, beautiful position, and the bishops come around as well. But still just all to play for here. I think it could go any result is possible, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
computer says 0.0, but definitely if Black loses control, White will win with this extra material. If White loses control, maybe that Black knight will decide the game. So is that what you call an octo knight, Jovanka? That knight with its kind of controlling 8 squares with its tentacles?
I also like Simon's description, the beast. Now Magnus moving the knight. I mean, we were waxing lyrical about this knight.
Yeah,
Did you see Duda's eyes when he made that move? Wow. Duda's eyes just widened. Like, why has he moved his great knight to be traded off?
That's very strange. I mean, why the knight can never be budged from the centre of the board because it couldn't have been attacked by a white pawn, and he's just moved it there. I mean, even the rook going up 1 square now is only going to help White's position. Very strange.
Just take that
just
knight
take
off
it
the board.
off.
Take it off the board and move the king onto a dark square, protecting the rook. As long as you've got that covered.
16 seconds for Duda.
Yeah.
16 seconds. Ooh.
And he doesn't take that Black knight. This is a really strange move by Duda. He could have kept things super simple. He's attacking the Black queen, though.
It's encouraging the queen to come forward.
Yeah, some stuff to calculate there. I'm not sure. Maybe the Black queen can jump back into the position. Maybe the Black queen just has to retreat. Either way, next move, Duda will be itching to get rid of that Black knight.
He's gone in. So now, if the queen's come, okay, this is a clever check because Magnus needs to keep the queens on. Otherwise, he's going to really struggle here.
He couldn't have even traded the queens, actually, because there would have been a Zwischenzug, as we call it, an in-between move. Bishops trading themselves off. And, okay, now Duda, he has a one-track mind. He's going to try and trade pieces because his rook, long-term, is going to be better than Black's bishop. That being said, the White king's still slightly open, so Magnus on the defensive for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if White can get the queens off the board, White's going to win this game without a shadow of doubt. So Black has to try and, keep the queen somehow active. One problem I think that Magnus might have here, though, is his bishop. I mean, as you say, he gave up his beautiful knight. But what is that bishop actually doing? OK, it's not a terrible piece, but it's not really attacking anything of White's. It's not aimed at any of White's pieces. You kind of, to my eyes, it doesn't look like a great piece.
Well,
queens and knights combine far better than queens and bishops as well. So very strange by Magnus there.
I agree with you both there, but I mean, I'm not that pessimistic about Magnus's position, just because, the White king is so shaky. If White tries to get even a little bit ambitious, he can't do it. Can't use both the rook and the queen because there's danger of perpetual check.
I guess White has to try to play this pawn break in the centre and open up the rook. That's something I'd be trying to do if I was White here. But OK, this is a good move from Magnus, stopping those opportunities. OK, he's going for another idea here, trying to swap the queens off in a crafty little check over towards the Black king.
Yeah, if White can retreat the queen now back to the f5 square next to the Black queen, swap it off, then White is going to win. The rook will beat the bishop. But Magnus can maybe just use his queen, put it on a different square, dodge that check. Maybe he can even move the Black king. Some options here. He needs to avoid that trade. OK, he retreats his bishop back to cover any potential checking squares from the White queen. Duda, meanwhile, exhaling there, maybe not so happy. I think Duda missed a trick just 2 moves ago. He could have brought his queen back to the centre of the board to stop Black's queen occupying this dream square. Look at Black's queen.
He was shaking his head there, wasn't he? Yeah, I mean, and now past pawns need to be pushed.
Yes.
That A pawn actually has a clear run through.
8 seconds, 7 seconds.
8 seconds, wow.
Really not that much time
Look
for
at the
Duda.
clock.
He has to make a move and panic. It just feels like it's starting to set in.
Yeah, I mean...
It's all about centralising queens, and Magnus is the best player in the world when it comes to centralising queens. Other players forget sometimes, and now White's queen stuck behind its pawns. It's only protecting things. Black's queen dominant on the dark squares, Black's bishop dominant on the light squares.
I mean, you'd like...
2 seconds for
2
Duda.
seconds.
2 seconds. He's going to move.
He made it with 2 seconds left.
Wow. He's quite a cool customer still, isn't he? I mean, like...
He's not
looking that cool, actually, is he? I'll say he's pretty cool, but, I mean, there is a limit.
Look at the bar!
Wow.
Is it a blunder?
Wow.
I think it's a big mistake. And look at this. Black can continue pushing his pawn because now if White's rook goes up to capture one of the Black pawns, this pawn will continue pushing down the board. Black is almost about to make a new queen. And
how does he do it? How does he always do it, Magnus? I mean, I always think, oh, he's going to struggle to, draw this one, and then he goes on to win.
Yeah, I think maybe there's a few winning moves, but black can push his B pawn forward now, connect those two. There we go, the pawns connect. White can't take that pawn with his own pawn because the black queen would pounce and take the white rook in the corner. These two black pawns are just going to win the game. White's king coming, trying to ride to the rescue, but it's not going to be enough. Look at those two pawns. If White's rook goes and captures a pawn now, there's going to be a check from the black queen, and White's rook is going to drop. Yeah. That one of those two black pawns is going to cost White the rook. Magnus is going to win.
Barry and
7
Barry.
seconds,
Wow.
5 seconds, and
He
look
might
at
lose
those
on
two
time here.
pawns.
He might just lose on time because he's lost anyway. I mean, is that it? Is it over?
Yeah, it is over.
It's over. Okay, well.
Did he actually lose on time? Or did he just resign?
I think he just let his clock run out because it's a hopeless...